Well, good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the Unbreakable Men podcast. You know, at this specific season in time that we are in, it is more important than ever for men to have a place where they are seen, where they are heard, and where they have an opportunity to express the uniqueness and the skills and the talent and the tenacity and the masculinity that they bring to the table. At Unbreakable Men, we are all about embracing the men in our communities because we know that the men are the leaders of the communities, and that if we're not careful, we can hurt our community by not fostering and supporting those leaders. So here we are today at Unbreakable Men, and I am so excited to introduce you to my special guest today, Austin Cash, who not only is a special guest that has an amazing story to share with you, but he's also a personal friend. And I think by the end of this story, you'll get to see why. And hopefully, he'll become a personal friend of yours and somebody for sure for you to keep your eyes on because he has something coming down the pipe as well. So, good afternoon. Welcome, Austin.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
You're welcome. Happy to have you. Austin, we have known you for probably like 10, 12,
Long time.
long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Been at church for a while now.
So we met Austin from our church, Family Worship Center in Elgin, and he's kind of he is one of the leaders in our church, and we've seen him develop into that role of leadership, not only in our church but also leading his family, and that's been really cool to watch.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. When I started going to the church 20 something years ago, I didn't really ever think it would get to this point.
Sure.
But I am very thankful and very blessed to be where I am. And it's been a great trip. It's been a great journey.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like it a lot.
Yeah. Royal and I talk about that all the time where when we first came into the church, we were like the back row seaters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like slowly when you stick with something and you stay in it and you get connected and you get in the community, you kind of move up and
Yeah,
you start
absolutely.
becoming not just a spectator or somebody in the community, but actually serving the community. And that's what we've really seen happen with you too.
Yeah, yeah, it's like I said, it's been a journey. Um, where I was and where I am now, I didn't see it getting here.
Yeah.
I didn't even see any kind of possibility of that.
Mm.
But it's been fun. I've had a few troubles and trials on the way,
Yeah.
but it hasn't been anything that would keep me down. It's fun. But yes, and you guys, I'm telling you what, I love having y'all there.
Oh,
Y'all
thanks.
have y'all have helped in ways that I can't even begin to describe.
Mm.
We appreciate y'all very much.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, Austin, I wanna dig into something, um, because you said something that I think all people can relate to,
Okay.
and that is, I would have never saw myself at that place, like, I never envisioned that,
Yeah.
right? Because, so many times we may get ideas for what our future might look like, but there's a whole journey between today and future,
Yeah.
right? There's an entire journey, and usually the journey is not like, "Ooh," like, we've got the path
Yeah,
and we're going on
absolutely.
it, right? There's ups and there's downs, and you shared with me kind of a period of time in your life where you had a trajectory of something that you were like, you're going in a specific direction, and then something shifted and it kind of changed everything. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was a pretty decent athlete. Um, I had talked to a couple different schools about playing football after I graduated. A pretty big Division 1 college here in Texas, and the week before my senior year started, I broke my leg playing,
Wow.
clean in half, completely ended my career,
Wow.
which was really hard for me because that was the only reason I went to school.
Yeah.
I didn't I wasn't worried about going to college for an education or anything like that. I just wanted to play football, and when I lost that, I kind of didn't really know what to do. It was a very difficult transition because
Mm.
that was all I cared about.
Sure.
I mean, I liked school, I got to hang out with my friends, but I knew that football was my way out.
Mm.
It was my way to not to not go down the path that had been set before me by some people in my life. And when I lost that, it was a hard hit,
Absolutely.
especially at 17.
Sure,
When
sure.
you really don't have anything else.
Yeah, well, I think back to being 17 or 13 or any like, our lens on life is so small,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And, I mean, we kinda think we know everything. We
yeah.
we feel like I've arrived, but our lens of life is so narrow.
Hmm.
So I can't imagine what that must have felt like and probably how it probably felt like every dream you had was just crushed. How did you process that?
Well, to be honest with you, I did not process it in a good way, in
Mhm.
any way, shape, or form. I ended up still going to college, and I thought about walking on, which didn't end up doing. I joined a fraternity. I partied a little bit more than I should have,
Mhm.
and then I ended up dropping out of college
Mm.
and going straight into the workforce. So I was handling it in the way that I had kind of seen other people handle losing
Sure.
things like that, and it took me into construction.
Like, metaphorically or physically?
No, physically. It
Okay.
took me from college. I didn't have any skills, because I really couldn't get over that hump,
Sure.
that knockdown, and it was hard. It took me a long time. I still talk about it, but it knocked me down and set me on a path that, now looking back at it, was obviously not where I needed to go, but
Mhm.
it's where I was at, and it was hard to get off of.
Mm.
It was a lot of difficult times. But yeah, so then I dropped out of college after I decided not to walk on, which was, again, because I thought to myself, what if it happened once, it's going to happen again.
If what if you had dreams for something and you lost them,
Well, I
or
worked so hard. I worked so hard for something,
Sure.
and I put all that effort into it because I was training every day
Yeah.
from sun up to sundown, and it was all just taken away, and it wasn't even my fault.
Right.
And so I figured, well, if that happened once, it's going to happen again. There's no reason to
Mhm.
try.
That's gotta be a sad place, and I think a lot of times we get ourselves there because that's you know, one of the things that I've picked up over my journey of supporting people is our brains look for facts, but our minds look for evidence,
Yeah,
right? And so we're constantly looking for evidence to reinforce whatever it is that we believe. The fact was you lost something that you had no control over. So your mind's always looking for evidence to support that fact that it could happen again. And that could be a very dangerous trap to be in.
yeah, definitely. And when I had pretty much given up on myself, really at that point, I went to do what I knew I could do, which was just work. I
Mhm.
knew I could work. I was raised to work.
Yeah, tell me about that.
um, my dad expected me to work,
Yeah,
and which is a good thing because I have a work ethic now, and I
sure.
appreciate that very much. But when I quit, I just went to work, and that's all I've done since. you know, Aside from raising a family and everything like that. But yeah, I went to work, and I didn't really let go of the bad things that I had been doing,
Mm.
and I carried it over, which was nice because I carried it over into construction, which is where that stuff kind of thrives.
Oh,
That I mean, that lifestyle.
okay.
It's uh, it's unfortunate, but it is true, especially in the line of work that I do. I tell people this and nobody believes me, but about 80 to 90% of the people I work with have been to prison
Wow.
for many different reasons.
Sure.
And thankfully, I'm not one of them.
Right.
I have not done that yet. Um, but yeah, so when I dropped out of school, I went to start building telephone lines, and about, let's see, what was that? 2013. I made a few more decisions that I shouldn't have, and I ended up running off and leaving, and I missed the last 6 months of my dad being alive,
Mm.
which I was 21 at that time,
Mhm.
and he died in January of 2014, right before he turned 54.
Wow.
So he was pretty young too,
Right.
which, at 21 is just, it's devastating.
Absolutely.
Losing a parent at any time is hard, but losing your father
Yeah.
at that point when you're starting to go from being a young adult to a man is just it's almost crippling. Um, it was very hard for me. I didn't know what I was supposed to do
Right.
as a man. Like I said, I knew how to work, and I knew that men needed to work,
Right.
but I didn't know in what other aspects of being a man I needed to improve. Um,
Mm.
and so it was a difficult time.
I can't imagine. I know Royal lost his mom at about age 24, I think it was. And you're right, that is a very interesting time in our life. Like, we've gotten freedom,
Hmm.
right? We're done with school, or maybe we've transitioned, or maybe we went to college, didn't go to college, but we're kinda out making decisions, and then we get to own, unfortunately, every decision that we make,
Hmm.
and without guideposts or a mentor or a dad, I'm sure that was really challenging for you.
Yeah, it was. I have a lot of good men in my life that have helped me.
Yeah.
They have truly helped me. But to lose a dad is just it's a whole nother level.
Mhm.
There's many guys at the church that I can call on at any moment.
Sure.
Even back then I could call on them and they would have done anything they could for me. But I was just after losing football and then losing my dad, and it was just I didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
I worked and I made dumb decisions.
Mm.
And so um thankfully thankfully I had Ashley.
Yeah.
I will say. And with having Ashley in my life, I had Pastor Jerry,
Yeah.
and he has been he's been great for me.
Mm.
He really has. But Ashley saw where I was going, and she was doing everything she could to put the brakes on it. She did
Aw.
not want me going down there because she had seen something in me that I hadn't seen or that hadn't been revealed to me yet.
Right.
And she's I will say she is one of the reasons that I am here where I'm at today, which I'm very thankful for. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, when my dad passed, it was hard. I became the man of my family, which
That's a big job.
yeah, I went from basically just working and making sure I had gas money and money to do whatever I wanted to working and making sure things were taken care of around the house and making sure that mom was all right and that my sister was all right 'cause she was in school at the time still. And so, I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't start paying for everything and all
No.
that, but I did have to make sure that I was available to them
Right.
in whatever capacity I could be, which wasn't the best, but at the time I was doing what I could.
Yeah.
Um, and then Ashley and I got married.
And life turned around.
Yes, and life turned around. It was see, that was in 2014 when he passed, and Ashley and I got married in 2016.
Okay.
And so in 2016, I not only went from having to take care of everything from my family, I had to then start taking care of Ashley and myself. And then we ended up having a baby not too long after.
Yeah.
And so it was, I went from just one dramatic change after the other in such a short period of time that I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was hard.
Right. Isn't that kind of how life is, though? When we're going through it, it feels so daunting sometimes
Mhm.
and scary. But when we look back, we're like, wow. I think about what would have happened had you gotten, not had your leg broken and gotten that scholarship with Baylor and
Oh,
continued your football journey. What would life have looked like today? Well, we don't know.
no, no, it would look completely different. Probably not even where I need to be either,
Sure.
you
Sure.
know. It's it's rough sometimes, that you think about it. Sometimes you have to go through stuff like that to truly get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
It's there's examples of that all across the Bible. I mean, David was chased by Saul. He was he wasn't even really supposed to be there, when he was anointed king.
Right.
You know,
He
uh,
wasn't invited to the
no,
table.
he wasn't even invited. So
Yeah,
it's sometimes things like that have to happen. It's not fun, and we never
right.
understand why,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's necessary.
Well, and I think it builds a resilience in you. You know, you think about, okay, at that stage in life, rightfully so. You had mentioned that you were kind of running from some trajectories. That's why where football was such a
Hmm.
big thing.
Yeah,
And then when that didn't work out, you leaving to go into the construction world, trying to get to your own thing. And but sometimes it takes those challenges to bring us back in line,
yeah,
and to develop those muscles and those skills and the tenacity and the grit, and I know part of your story has a lot of tenacity. I mean, come on, you have 4 kids.
yeah. I do. I have 4 kids, and they're all under 10, and they are all wonderful. I wouldn't trade them for the world.
Oh my god, cutest kids ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they can be sometimes. Yeah, you know, at some point, especially as a man, at some point you have to look and go, nobody else is going to do this. I have to do it.
Yeah,
There is nobody coming to my rescue.
right.
There is nobody that's going to make sure my kids are fed. There's nobody that's going to make sure the lights are on. I have to take care of it.
Yeah.
And that point came for me. Oh man, Michael was probably, well, actually, he was one, and Addison had just barely been born. And I went off and decided to become a contractor
Right.
and work for myself. And I'll tell you what, that was probably the worst decision I've ever made because it took Ashley and separated her from me because I
Right.
had to travel because I couldn't work in Austin.
Right.
I had to travel and leave, and I left her at home with 2 kids, one
Both
and
in
under.
diapers?
Yeah, both in diapers, which was just, I feel bad for it now, but it has allowed us to do quite a few things. But that was the moment that I decided I have to do this.
Right.
I have to make this work. Nobody else is going to do this for me.
Yeah.
And it was probably the worst decision I've ever made, but it's also one of my favorite decisions I've ever made
Yeah,
because
tell us about that. Yeah.
um, yeah. So in 2017, I went off and started contracting. And I have been ever since. I'm an independent contractor. I take work from anybody that'll give it to me, and I do the best that I can. But um, I went off, and my first contract was in Houston, and I went down there to work for this guy, and we had borrowed every penny we could, saved everything we could to get the equipment so I could start. And I go down there, and I'm down there for a month. And this was really the first time that I had been away from my family
Right.
since Ashley and I got married and we had kids. And I was down there, and I was staying in this hotel in Weimar, Texas, just outside of Houston, right by the big Bucky's. And I was there for a month, and I had $300 left on our credit card limit. I hadn't gotten paid. Ashley couldn't come see me. I was working nights, so I didn't really get to talk to her either. And this guy that I was working for calls me up, and he said, "Hey, man, just to be honest with you, I'm not paying you for this work you've done." And I was like, I've been here for a month. You've told me it was today. What's happening?" He's like, "Yeah, well, you actually created more problems by doing what we had talked about doing than what you were supposed to do." And I said, I have no money to go home, man. Like, I can't do anything. He's like, "Well, that's not my problem. I'm sorry. Don't come into work tonight. You're done." I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a fun phone call to Ashley."
Right.
And so I remembered that I had another buddy that was working out in Bandera at the time, and I was like, "Man, I should probably call him before I call Ashley and see if he has anything for me." And so I call him. I said, "Look, man, I've been working out here. I'm not getting paid. The guy just told me I have no money. I I can't make it home." And he said, "Give me a minute. I'll call you back." And about 10 minutes later, he calls me back and he says, "Hey, if you can get to Bandera tomorrow, then you can start working." I said, "Oh man, I don't know how I'm going to do this." So I called Ashley and I said, "Look, here's the deal. I have to be in Bandera tomorrow." And of course, she wouldn't just accept that.
Well,
She had 7,000 questions.
yeah. As we do,
Yeah.
as we're trying to
And
control everything and
yeah,
keep life going and sanity, but yes,
exactly.
carry on.
And so she had 7,000 questions. I said, "Look, I need you to see if we can find enough gas money for me to get there and have something to eat so that I can go to work tomorrow." And she said, "Okay." And we ended up calling in a few favors, and I was able to get to Bandera. And that guy, he, I got there. He let me sleep in my truck at the yard so that I had somewhere to sleep.
Mm,
Um, and I started working, and thankfully, it was supposed to be a 21-day pay period.
mm.
Um, he helped me out and got me paid the end of that week for the work that I had
Wow,
done,
wow.
and that was one of the first times that I had seen, when you step up, because at that point, man, I had stepped up, I had done everything I thought I needed to do, but I hadn't really taken that step to put my faith in God.
Mhm.
I mean, I had always believed my whole life. I had been raised in church. I knew everything, you know, Jesus.
Knowing and believing and
Yes.
doing, yeah.
And I that was the first time that God had ever just been like, "Okay, all right, we're good now. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and pick you up and set you over here. You're safe. You're on a life raft. You're good to go."
Mm,
And
wow.
yeah, that's why I say it was one of the worst decisions I've ever made and one of my
Sure,
favorite,
sure.
because it was extremely hard, but it brought me to the place where I finally started going, "Oh, he does care.
Yeah.
He actually wants to see me succeed. He is going to make sure that I am fine at the end of the day."
And you had to take the step.
Yeah, it's a fact. I had to take the step. And Ashley had been pushing me towards that step, and I kept fighting it.
Oh,
But yes, I did. We did have to actually take the step, and he did. He caught me.
mm.
It was great. It was so awesome.
I think that's an amazing story. Again, one of those things where you're like, I didn't want to walk through. Like, I don't want to ever have to be at that place again. But if I find myself there, I know I'm covered.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's so freeing, Austin. I feel like so many times in life, we really feel like we're alone. And I'm sure with the situations that you've personally been through, feeling lonely has probably been part of your DNA for a little while.
Yeah, it definitely has been. It definitely has been. It's hard. Especially, and it makes it even worse. What I do is 99% of the time we're literally by ourselves.
Yeah.
You spend all day every day by yourself, and
Yeah.
sometimes all night.
Yeah.
And so yeah, loneliness, feeling that alone it's definitely there, and it's daunting.
Sure.
It's it crosses my mind quite often. But it's it is nice. I've experienced it. That was the first big time, but I've had it happen time and time and time again.
Yeah.
Where
Tell me
we're
another one.
so I had stopped working on telephone lines and started doing something else, and that had come to an end. And when it came to an end, I had absolutely nothing. I had less than I had the last time I had nothing, which I didn't even think was
Mm,
possible. And I made one phone call.
wow.
It was the exact same situation. One phone call. I called a friend of mine, good old boy from Louisiana, great guy, love him to death. And I called him. I said, "Look, man, it's bad. It's real bad, and I need help." And he goes, "All right, man. Well, come on. I'm 3 hours away. Get down here." And I drive down there, and I show up, and he's one of those man's man. No emotion. Everything's fine. I'm gonna work, and if there's a brick wall in my way, I'm gonna hit it with my forehead until it falls down.
Wow.
I mean, he's one of those guys. And I show up, and he looks at me. He goes, "We're gonna go to the store right quick before we get all settled in." And I said, "All right." And we go, and I tell you what, it's the craziest thing, but he bought me a pack of socks. He bought me a pack of socks because the ones I had holes in them.
Mm,
And he was like, "You need these." He goes, "Just put them in the basket. I'm paying for it anyways. We're gonna
mm,
go back. We're going to." He's from Louisiana, so he cooks amazing Cajun food.
yeah.
Went back to the camper. He cooked me up some rice and gravy, and I by the end of that week, I had enough money to pay our bills and catch up on what we were behind with.
Wow.
And I mean, it's just time and time again, God has just always caught me. And I don't even have words to describe how it feels. It's
Yeah.
just it's when you're a kid, you have your parents as that safety net. And you grow up and you think, "Oh man, I don't have a safety net anymore." Or I don't
Sure.
have anybody to catch me. And sometimes we fall because that's just how it happens. But God is always there with us even when we fall.
Right.
And
And he's preparing somebody to buy you some socks
that is
because he
fact.
cares about your
Yes,
feet.
he does care about my feet. I mean, when you spend all day on them, you got to
Yeah.
care about them. But it's just time and time again, it has always been like that, and
Wow.
it's awesome. And
Yeah.
so it has caused me to think, well, if he can do this for me, everything that I've done, everywhere that I've been, every low that I've had, um, I need to help other people understand this.
Mm.
And so I've started I've started working with the young men at the church, the sophomore to sophomore in high school to sophomore or juniors in college. Um,
That's such a I I'm I'm so happy to hear you say that because that was the most difficult probably season in your life was that transition season. That
yeah,
was the time that you knew, decisions that we make set us on those trajectories. So how
yeah,
cool is that that you can relate to people back to that very specific season in your life that was the most challenging?
yeah. It's I, Miss Teresa, to be honest with you, I hadn't even thought about that, but that's just what I felt led to, and it's exactly where it was.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've been working with them, and it's been awesome. Those, those guys, I feel bad for my parents.
Do you feel bad for your parents or their parents or both?
I don't feel bad for their parents because their parents don't have to deal with
With
how
you?
I was because none of them are anywhere like I was. But it's interesting to look at them and go, man, uh, I was there and I was in a position that God help them they don't ever have to be in
Sure.
or they don't ever have to experience. Um, but yeah, it's brought me so much joy to spend time with those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, a couple of them just graduated. It's fun. I invited a couple of the guys from the church to my high school graduation, and I was like, man, when I got older, I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds foolish. I don't, I see them at church. I talk to them. I say hi. I don't really need to go to anything like that. And now I'm like, I'm excited. I'm excited
Yeah.
to go to these. I'm excited to see where they're going.
Well, you find the value in those very important defining moments in somebody's
Yeah,
life, and you wanna celebrate it with them.
yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. It brings me so much joy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I'm just thankful that God is allowing me to be in this position,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, that's a huge responsibility and it's a huge honor,
Yeah,
right?
it is a huge
When he
honor.
trusts you. And I think that's one of those things again, back to the phrase of our brains look for facts, but our minds look for evidence. And
Mhm.
now, Austin, you have all of this evidence built up in you that you're truly not alone. And as get into moments or work moments or whatever that is where it feels like, am I alone here? You're like, no, I've got all this evidence that
Yeah,
reminds me that I'm not
yeah,
alone, that somebody is there with me. And for you to have the desire to pour that into somebody else, and maybe their struggle isn't loneliness, or maybe their struggle isn't feeling like they lost things beyond their control, but a struggle is real.
yeah,
And just having somebody meet you at your struggle, even if they don't fully understand it, like your friend from Louisiana, he didn't get it, but he got you
yeah,
and he saw you.
yeah.
And that's what people need.
Yeah, and it's hard nowadays because these guys, there's such an attack on being a man.
Yeah.
that men have to do this or they have to do that, or they can't show emotion, they can't do this. You can't be anything less than Samson.
Right.
You have to be a certain thing, and it's
But then you
harder for
also get in trouble for being Samson.
that is a fact. You definitely
Yeah.
get in trouble
Now
for
and
being
maybe
Samson.
you should get a little bit of trouble for you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was kind of a brat, but um, but yeah, just that tough that any I can take on anything. The toll doesn't matter as long as the objective is met, and that's such a that's a dangerous place
Right,
because it's very hard, especially for young men, to understand um, how that looks, how that changes you, how that shapes you.
right.
I have two sons and they're vastly different children. I mean, one of them is very sweet, very soft spoken, and the other one will try and fist fight a wall. I mean, he just will. And so, dealing with them is dealing with each of them individually. I have to do it differently.
Sure.
And so I have to also show them that being a man is being tough and getting results and getting things done, but also having the ability to look at something and say, okay, this needs to be dealt with a soft hand,
Mm,
with a gentle touch. This isn't something that you can hit. It's something you have to grab a hold of and understand it. And it's a very it's a very hard thing for me to do. um
but how wise of you to already be thinking that, even if it's a challenge, Austin. A lot of people don't even come to that place, and I think that that's the wisdom that you've gotten from your heavenly Father,
yeah.
because he has to deal with all of us uniquely and differently and reach us where we're at and send the right people like the ones that saved you through those situations,
Yeah.
and he had to prepare them. Like I think about this. He prepared them to have the work,
Mhm.
the resources, and the desire to support you.
Mhm.
He prepared them already in advance because he
Absolutely.
had you in mind,
Yeah.
right? And he does that for all of us.
Mhm.
And now when you see those things and you're raising young men, you're raising boys up and you model that behavior, if we could literally bottle that up and show it to others, well, you're already doing that. You're doing that with the young men at the church. You're
Yeah.
doing that with every time you speak to somebody and you share your heart with genuine transparency and vulnerability like today's talk. That's exactly what you're doing, and it's shifting minds and changing beliefs.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. It's just hard being a man today, being a man in general. And it's men for so long have been I'm he man, I'm gonna do it myself. I don't want help. I don't need help.
Sure.
And man, it's tiring.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. Um I I try to help anybody I can. I'm not good at much, but I'm telling you what, I'll be there for support. Um, and I'm trying to help people see that it's okay, men to see that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a long time to ask for help. I ask Royal for help all the time. He's gonna help me do a couple different things for too long
Yeah.
if I can get him to do it.
I bet you can. He likes you.
But yeah, it took. I mean, and having Pastor Jerry as a father-in-law
Yeah.
has it's I'll tell you, it's drastically helped. It has helped me quite a bit in the fact that um, my perception of a man does not cry ever.
Mm.
It's very rare that you'll ever see me cry, and that's something that I still need to work through because sometimes it's healthy. I'm not going to say as often as he does it is, but he Pastor Jerry is a man's man. There's nobody that can deny that, and um, seeing him deal with situations and even deal with the Lord in the way that he does is helping me. It's helped me tremendously
Right.
get to where I can actually open up about things and deal with difficult situations in a way that isn't hostile or aggressive.
Absolutely.
And so that has been a big help.
Well, I think it's like the great equalizer that you have modeled through 2 human fathers that you've
Mhm.
had, right? Your dad that truly instilled an impeccable work ethic in you, right?
Yeah.
Probably didn't show a whole lot of emotion based on how you described him.
Yeah, he was a hard man. He was a good father, and I knew that he loved me very much.
Yeah,
There was no question in that. But he wanted us to work.
absolutely. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. To create that desire for somebody to just do like what you said earlier when you said, "I knew nobody was gonna rescue us." Like, I needed to do my part.
Mhm.
And that I think that's something that so many people, that we come to grips with at some point in life, and some of us probably wish we would have come to grips with it earlier,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But when you think about what you talked about, when you talked about your boys and you said, I've got to show them how to do things with the spirit kind of a warrior and, that
mhm.
strong arm and the soft glove. I think of the representation that you have of both of your dads,
Yeah,
right? That's
exactly.
and that beautiful blend. So what a blessing that you've had both of those. And I know Pastor Jerry's work ethic as well is impeccable and he doesn't stop. He's constantly serving. And
Yes,
I mean, half the time he's mowing somebody's yard,
that
right?
is the fact. He does it in a suit, but he does it.
But just seeing that beautiful balance gives you something to model. I think one of my favorite quotes of his is more is caught than taught.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That is a fact. Yeah, and not just them, but Pastor McCorkle.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what, Pastor McCorkle, he had a way about him. It's hard to describe, but you see a man like that, and that's who I want to be. I
Yeah.
want, trying to say that without sounding some kind of way, but I want people to see me as I saw Pastor McCorkle. You know, um,
Well, what are some of those attributes?
well, I'll tell you right now, he gave more than he ever took.
Mm.
That is just that's something that I have been trying to work on.
Yeah.
Is he gave more than he ever took ever,
Yeah.
and that's extremely important to me.
Mm.
Because that's really what I think it's all about is
Mm.
giving as much as we can, making
Yeah.
sure because that's what walking in love is giving yourself for somebody else.
Right.
And so, um, and he was a heck of a fisherman too. I tell you
Do you
what,
fish?
I love to fish.
Okay.
My boys love to fish, and I don't get to go as often as I'd like to, but yes, they love to fish.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he was always steadfast. He was if he went this way on something, that was how he was always going to go.
Yeah.
If he was constant and he was always there.
Yeah.
And that's what I try. Him, Pastor Jerry, they're just guys that I try and act like.
Yeah.
One day, hopefully.
Well, I think as I'm hearing you talk, one of the things that has really come to mind in this is that, you talked about it's really hard being a man today. And I will say also it's hard to be a woman. Um,
100%.
but I think what anchors all of us with whatever is our core values. And when we come to the place that we decide, okay, my values determine what I say the real authentic me is,
Mhm.
whether male or female, that determines the real authentic version of me. And that becomes my guiding light, not other people's opinions, definitely not social standards of what
Absolutely.
men or women should be. And I think that's the trap, Austin. I feel like one of the biggest traps that we run into right now is the loudness of the velocity that we're receiving this hate, this dismantling of people. But when we really dig back to our core values, like I think as you described Pastor McCorkle, he wasn't worried about being Samson. No.
No.
He knew exactly who he
Yeah,
was, and one
absolutely.
of the things that you just mentioned is that the ability to always be a certain way, to give more than you take,
Mhm.
because that was probably his value, and that's why it was so clear with him, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as we really dig into this, being so clear on your values cuts all of the noise out on what society says, because society is always going to do one thing: try to steer you from who you're supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Having your core values instilled is probably the single most important thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know who you are, the world is going to tell you to be whoever they want you to be, and
Mhm.
that's very rarely a good thing.
Which usually leads to major confusion.
It does lead to major confusion. It leads to some pretty difficult things, lifelong, life altering things that are very hard to come back from sometimes.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that Ashley and I have worked on our kids with is, you know, obviously they know their grandpa, they know their great grandpa, they know how they were. They don't know Grandpa Mike, which is unfortunate because
Yeah.
he would have been wrapped around every one of their fingers.
Oh,
It
yeah.
would have been fun. But they know where we stand. They know that the most important thing is God, is your
Yes.
relationship with Him. There's nothing more important than that. They know that the next thing is family,
Mm,
and then they know that they need to help whoever they can, however they can.
mm.
And so it's hard for kids to understand that, but that's something that we as parents have to work on, that way, because at some point they are going to go out on their own,
Right.
and they're gonna have people and things speaking into their life that is going to go against what we taught them. And if those core values aren't instilled like they should be or need to be, then it's honestly it's a crapshoot at that point,
Sure.
you know. And of course, we'll always be there to pick them up and love on them and say, you know, it's going to be all right. But if we instill those core values, it makes things a lot easier later on.
Absolutely. Well, they have something to be anchored to.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that people have today, is that we're swayed to the left and to the right, and we don't, as a society, people don't have something to be anchored to. They'll stand up and fight for things, but at the end of the day, they don't even know why they're fighting, right? If you try to break it down, and I think it's so interesting, no matter what your beliefs are, what your faith is, what you stand for, left or right, when it comes down to it, most of us at our core want this. If you can get down to it, you
Hmm.
want the same thing. How we get there without core values, without a guidepost, a guiding light, is going to take you in directions that maybe you would have never considered ever
Yeah.
going through. And yeah, it's interesting that people can be so polarized, yet at the core we have the similar desires.
Yeah.
And most of it is to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, you are exactly right. And it's hard sometimes because sometimes we have core values instilled in us that are not what they should be.
Mm,
Um, and they have to be relearned or they have to be retaught.
yeah.
And um, that's one of my favorite things about going to church is because it my core values, the core values I was taught at home are the exact same as what I learned at church.
Yeah.
My parents did a fantastic job of that.
Mm,
Um, Not everybody has that,
right.
and so when people like that get a chance to come into church, it's important for people like me who have had these experiences, people like y'all who have had these experiences, um, to show them and help them
Mhm.
and nurture that desire to be loved
Right.
and show them the right way to do it, the way that it shows in the Bible to
Right.
show love.
Right.
um it's very important, and so many people are looking for that right now.
Yeah. And we talked earlier about AI
Yeah,
and the
love AI.
yeah, me too. I'm like geeking out over here and can't wait to implement all
Yeah,
kinds of really cool
yeah,
things.
100%.
Yes. And with that becomes this. overwhelming need for authenticity. Like, we are at this place where you can have anything you want. Like I was at this training over the weekend and it was so incredible. And I told the guy on day two, he was like, "Who has takeaways?" I'm like, "I do." Anyway, I was like, I feel like I'm sitting in the movie Aladdin and somebody literally put a genie bottle in my
Yep.
hand and I can just create whatever I want. And
Mhm.
the truth is you can. But and with that becomes this significant increase in inauthenticity, like not authentic things, right? Like there is going to be within the very near future, like less than 6 months from now,
Probably.
you're going to be asking yourself, am I really talking to a human
Oh, yeah.
or not? Like today you can still tell, "Hello, this is
Yeah.
XYZ,"
Yeah,
right? It still
absolutely.
feels super
It's still a
robotic,
little bit robotic.
just a little bit. But within a few months, we're gonna be like, "Oh my god, is this real? Is this not real? Is this real? Is" and that's going to take people back to a place where hunger for authenticity
Yes.
and hunger for truth and hunger for real connection is paramount, and it's going to and hopefully that thing will drive people into our church,
Yeah.
into places where human connection just happens organically. They don't
Yeah.
have to, recreate it and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And Austin, I think you're so spot on when you say we that are used to these certain core values and used to just the this is just normal. We've got to understand that we're meeting people at different places who have had different values within them, good, bad, and different. They're going to believe a different way. They're going to see a different way. They're going to act a different way. They're going to think a different way. And we have to literally have that lens cleaner out so that we can see them through love and not through judgment.
Yeah, and that's a very important that's a message in and of itself right there. But it's very important because a lot of people see a lot of churches will see people and think, well, they're doing this, they can't be here. They're doing that, they can't, And the Bible, Paul specifically talks about it is the church's job to love those
Absolutely.
outside the church.
Right.
There's no judgment. It's not our job first off, but it's our job to just love them, to
Yeah.
bring them in, love on them,
Yeah.
tell them it's going to be all right,
Yeah.
feed them, and make sure they come back next Sunday
Yeah.
and check on them throughout the week.
Right.
And that is a very that's actually near and dear to my heart. I try and do that as often as I can. There's a guy that came to the church it's been a couple months now, and I've sent him some texts, and I haven't been as diligent as I should, but his name's Elijah. And he came a couple times and I've talked to him, and he was going through some stuff, and he has not been back to the church, and I'm gonna have to find out where he went because that's disappointing. Not disappointing. Uh,
Well, you're sad for him,
yeah,
right?
I'm sad
Yeah.
for him. I just, I should be better about it. But yes, you're absolutely right. The church, our job is to whoever walks through those doors, whoever we meet on the street, our job is to love them.
Yeah.
It's to love on them, tell them Jesus loves them,
Yeah.
and it's going to be all right.
Absolutely. And that gives him hope because Austin, how many people do you think are walking around in life just like you were that have had circumstances happen that are totally beyond their control? There was nothing they could do about it. And sometimes we create our own mess and we learn from that as well, but
I have done that as well.
me too. But how many people do you think right now are walking around with that? But what's missing is they didn't have the values that you had. They didn't have the truth spoken over you because it's been taken out of church. I mean, out of school. It's been taken out of public places. All these values that we've had, biblical values, truths, right? They've been taken out and they have been manipulated and just completely lost on them. And so they have no hope. And when we think about that, it is a huge responsibility and burden for us to fill that gap. And you said a minute ago, it's not our job to judge. And I think sometimes, Yeah, okay, you've worked with people. I know you've been a self-contractor for a long time.
I have.
Yes, but you've probably worked with people before, or you've been on teams. Let's go to
Yes.
football. Not that I know much about football,
That's
but
all
let's
right.
just go here.
Teamwork is
We'll
teamwork.
go here. Okay, so teamwork. So you're on the football team. What happens if you are the quarterback and you take on the job of a lineman?
You miss the snap and you fumble the ball.
Okay. What happens if you take on the job of the umpire?
You are probably gonna be looked at like you're crazy because you're just not anywhere near where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Give me another position.
Uh, Running back and you're trying to act like a defensive end.
Okay.
It's not gonna work.
It's not gonna
It's not
work.
gonna work.
Right. Yet somehow, for some reason, we take on the quote unquote responsibility to do somebody else's job and things mess up.
Yeah, things mess up and then we get mad about it.
And then we get mad about it, and then we get our feelings hurt
Yeah.
about it. But if we would just stick with our job, and I'm pretty sure our job is love
Yes. I'm about 90% sure that that's what Jesus said the Great Commission was. Go forth and spread the gospel and love on people.
and love people. So why are we picking up judgment? That's not our job. That's not our position. Is it because we like chaos? Because we like to be
That is a good question. Um, I don't know. I don't know why we do that. I have done it before, and I'm unfortunately still lean that way sometimes and try and catch myself. Um, it all it really does is hurt people.
it does.
And um, to answer your question as to why we do that, I have no idea.
I think the reason we do it is because nobody has explained to us the rules of the game. If somebody were to play football for the first time or
Yeah.
basketball like I did, silly me running down the court on the wrong like I don't even tell I can't even tell you the terms of basketball, but I loved basketball. And when
Hmm.
we got to third quarter, the court switches.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I forgot. And so I scored
Hmm.
an amazing
Yep.
shot.
And it was in your own basket.
Yeah. And I didn't know. But see, when we don't understand the rules of the game, we can never play it right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that they talk about in the Bible quite a bit.
Mm,
Um, the rules of the game per se. Uh, you find a good church they'll help you learn the rules of the game.
yeah.
Thankfully, I found one.
Me too.
Yes, thankfully we found one years ago. But yeah, I think one of the reasons now though is that a lot of a lot of the hurt, a lot of the world has a lot more of a voice
Absolutely.
than the church does. Um, God can obviously meet anybody anywhere at any time.
Right.
He can do that.
Right.
But a lot of people don't want him to.
Right.
And when they meet people like us and we just love on them, I think that opens a lot of people up to being loved on and to letting something like that happen to you as well.
Mm,
Um, because he's not going to push on you. He's not going
right.
to do something you ain't going to let him do.
Right.
I mean, that's just he never has. And but when people see us, because that's really what we're doing is we're supposed to be taking on the identity of Jesus, the loving, the helping, the everything that he did. We're even supposed to be able to do the miracles, but man, that's a tough one. Um, but the loving on people and regardless of who they are, what their situation is, that opens people up a lot.
Absolutely.
You would, it's I have a friend of mine, another guy from Louisiana. He was very adamant against ever getting married. He I still don't know if I've got him swung over to coming to church yet or not, but
Mm,
he was very adamant against getting married, very adamant against having kids. Never even wanted a girlfriend. He said, I like to live my life as a bachelor doing whatever I wanted. I said, that's perfectly fine. You